Question I want us to answer. I know I look tired. Some of you are good at assessing my facial expression and appearance, and you tell me, today you look tired. Today you look so annoyed. You know, I love those inboxes and the people who send those messages. Some of you I left you like I gave you the right to speak to me that way because I know you know me far beyond internet. All right, I want to answer this question. How much do you charge? Uh, how much do you charge per return? And again, what are these things you look at? What are the determinants of your price? Interesting question. But I would love to answer you because I know it could be troubling your mind. By the time you bring it up, you need an answer. So, should we go business or individual? Let's go individual first. Let's talk about individual return. Usually, actually, the overall thing is if charges depend on the complexity of the matter. I question you a few things and you answer me and immediately know your category. I normally ask you about your income. Not that I will charge you based on how much you earn, no. But what are these components? Do you have a W-2? Are you a W-2 earner or a salary earner? Are you an employee? Then 1099s. These are so blood, So many. We have NEC, non-employee compensation, usually applies to contractors, people who are self-employed or independent. Then we look at the 1099G. If you got any refunds, mostly state refunds, we look at 1099 miscellaneous. Most of the time, these guys get one-time payment or one-time grant or what. We have the 1099R for those people who receive retirement from their pension. We have SSA 1099, that is for social security. We also have 1099K, So, when I talk about your income, I look at all this. Before I even tell you I'll charge you this much. Because most of these prices are predetermined. We have a pricing schedule or scale. We know because the more the complex the return, the more the forms. So, and the more the forms, usually the higher the price. These systems also we use as sets to communicate it that way. If someone has only one W-2, they may not need a lot. But if you find yourself in a scenario where you have a lot of these people who invest in crypto, you have this Bitcoin, you have stocks. So sometimes your return gets complicated, it becomes complex. We also look at remember we're filing the returns and we are doing to federal and the state. And this should actually help you. For your case, who asked this question, I know you live in a state where you don't have to file or you don't have to pay income tax. We have those states that don't need you to file for income tax. The so-called Texas, the Floridas, I think even Arizona. I need to come up with a list of those. There are so many. We come across this every day. So people from those states, they shouldn't worry about state taxes because they don't pay state taxes. Usually they end up most of the time not filing the state return. But for you in Massachusetts, Sijui, Maryland, I think Washington also pays. I need to confirm that. But most of you are coming from states that really file state returns. Therefore, you have to think about it. And most of the times we transfer information from the federal. That's why some of you have always told me, I want to start with a state return. And I'm telling you, it's better to start with a federal return because the federal is a bigger funnel that feeds into this small funnel, which is the state. If you want to start with a state moving to the federal, that's okay. But for simplicity, why do you complicate your life? Start with the federal and import data straight to the state. So I also want to talk about these other forms because I'm talking about the complexity of the return. If you have this form 1098, this has so many ways, but we like when you see 1098, you should always think about interest expense. But now interest, we have a 1098E for the students. There are those that have paid student interest loans, but there are also those who have paid mortgage interest. So that is form 1098. So when I see that form, or when I ask you about it, just I'm trying to look into that area. And some of you have even paid and have not even obtained these forms, or some of you have obtained them but you have not attached them. Please do this for us. Simplify life by giving us a complete file. Oh, let's make your file complete for simplicity. There is a form called 1095. This talks about your insurance, mental health insurance, especially those who get insurance from their marketplace. There's this form 1095A. We need that form. Whether we need it for, if you get 1095A, we need this. But if you get 1099, 1095B or C, depending, but most of the times we just use it for confirmatory purposes, just to confirm. There are those who get insurance by themselves, and there are those who get insurance by their employers. There are those who get insurance through your spouse. Like my hubby has insurance at his workplace, and I'm insured that, as part of his workplace insurance. So you usually want to have this information just to confirmatory purposes. The deductions and credit. Your return becomes more complex if you find out you have dependents, and you have to get into the dependent and care credit. You have to look at the earned income tax credit. You have to look at the child tax credit. So there are so many other factors. So when you ask me, how do you come up with that price? There are so many factors that we look at, because the more complex the return, the more the time, the more the forms, the more the payment. And some of you have lived in 2 states or more, like especially the traveling nurses. This is your common scenario. I've seen this with you all the time. You've lived in state A for 3 months, state B for 4 months, state C for another maybe 5 months. So you've always lived in different states and you've always been earning. So for you, we have this state of residence, then we have these other states, and the situation gets interesting if they are different employers. It's usually a chain. It's usually one employer that makes you move into these different places where they have branches or businesses, but it gets interesting where the employers are different, and maybe you need to look at the resident and non-resident issue. So there are so many factors to consider here. I don't know if I've answered you. I don't know if you still need answers about this question of how do we come up with a price. But the truth is, when you look at individual returns, we look at all that. We also look at the carryovers. Some of you have these capital carryovers, capital losses. You've carried over. So we look at some of those things. We look at these investments. You have these forms, the 1099 dividends. I don't know if I mentioned about it. There is this form 1099 interest. There is this form 1099B. So there are so many forms, and some of them I forget when I'm talking about them, but usually we see this on a daily. 1099s are so broad, so big. That's why it becomes our point of focus when we are looking at your return. Did I answer